Before we proceed, let's see whether we have the same idea of what is likely to happen this afternoon. Mr. Bashe, what's your estimate of whether we will finish today or not? And I want to also check whether, if we are not going to finish today, whether there is a chance that we could go over to tomorrow, whether everybody concerned would be available.
Chairman, I believe we should be done between 4 and 4:30.
4 and 4:30?
Yes, I think within the normal time.
Yes. If we are not done by then, did we have tomorrow available for, in case we don't finish today?
No.
Or not? What in terms of the timetable, I don't see what's supposed to be there for tomorrow. Do you know?
I'm not sure, Chairman, but I'm not available tomorrow.
You are not available tomorrow?
I'm not available tomorrow.
Oh, now I remember. I remember that you are not available from tomorrow. Oh, so tomorrow is out of the question because you won't be available.
But, Chairman, I'm very sure that we're going to finish.
Yes. Well, I will see what happens what the situation is by the time we reach the point where you have exhausted your questions. I may want to have more time to ask certain questions myself that might not, we might not have enough time to do that this afternoon. But we, maybe at the time that you are done, I could see the legal representatives in chambers to talk about what is possible and what's not possible. And then we'll take it from there. Okay, you had that, Mr. Tabete.
Yes, Chair.
And I know your legal representatives also had it. Okay, all right, let's continue.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Tabete, we were talking about the the cession and assignment of the Phumelela local municipality land for the dairy farm. Maybe I should ask you this question. Who selected Vrede as the best locality for the dairy farm?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The recommendation on the availability of the land was the MEC that indicated to us that the municipality in Vrede does have land that we could then talk to them and see if they could make it available.
Who is this MEC you refer to?
It's MEC Msebenzi Zwane. Because Vrede was his locality, so he knew.
That's where he grew up.
That's where he grew up.
Yes.
In fact, you had accompanied him to Vrede to speak to the beneficiaries, had you not?
That's correct, Chair.
How many times did you visit Vrede with MEC Zwane?
Chair, on this specific project, I could remember, I think about 3 times.
And when you went to do the presentation at the council, offices on the 12th of June 2012. Was he in your company or did he join you at any point in time?
No, he wasn't there, Chair. If I remember very well. There was a mention that he would join, but he didn't join.
I might as well ask, you have indicated that you visited the farm a number of times. The Premier, the then Premier, Mr. Ace Magashule, visited the Vrede Dairy Farm. Were you part of that delegation?
I'm trying to think, Chair. I think I was.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, I think I was there.
Do you recall what the purpose of that visit was?
Chair, when he visited the farm, it was already when we had problems. He just then wanted to go and see if indeed there was a project, because the initial problems was like there was nothing and money has been spent. So he wanted to go and see whether there was a project indeed, which then I accompanied, if I remember well, Chair.
And when you accompany the Premier on a visit like that, what would your role be?
My responsibility was to respond to questions on site.
Would you have the Chief Director District Services there? Would you have extension officers there?
That would be, Chair, a requirement that there should be somebody in the department to be able to respond to all the questions.
Oh, are you saying if you were not able to attend, they would be there?
If I was not able even to answer some of the questions, so they will be there to respond to.
The technical expertise that was brought to the farm, did you have a sense of what that might have been?
You mean, Chair, through you, the people that were brought?
Well, you know, the documents here speak of technical expertise, and we know that Estina knew nothing about, as a company, was not an agricultural company. So I'm assuming that technical expertise would have come from Paras. Now, do you know the form of that technical expertise?
Not exactly all of them, Chair, but I remember there was a stage where they had indicated that there was a vet on site that was brought. But I'm not really sure exactly what expertise overall. I think Dr. Masiteng would have maybe known exactly what expertise was on site.
You know, I ask because, again, Mr. Person gave evidence and said that when the processing plant was being installed, he was there. He was not impressed at all with two things. One, with the 3 Indian nationals who were there. He says they rocked out without even a screwdriver, the people who'd come to install this particular plant. That's the one thing. And the second was the quality of the materials that were used. In my words, I would say it's second-hand materials, very close to scrap. Did you hear anything at all about those materials being substandard?
No, I haven't, Chair. I've also listened to his interview when he mentioned that. But none of the officials of the department had come to say we have a problem, and this is what was happening on the ground.
No, maybe what I was going to ask is exactly what you want to ask.
No, go ahead, Chairman, while I find my agreement.
Well, did you just say that you don't know what expertise was brought onto the farm?
That's correct, Chair.
And did you also say that you don't know whether the assertion by Mr. Passon that the material that was brought onto the farm was not new, looked second-hand, and I think he may have mentioned that some of it was rusted. I may be wrong, but he certainly said that the equipment that was brought, I think from India, that was my impression, was not new material. It was old stuff. You are not able to say whether that's true or not. Is that so?
No, I'm not able to say, Chair, because I heard it the first time when he was testifying.
Giving
here.
evidence.
Yes.
Yes. But on the occasions when you visited the farm, did you not observe any equipment that gave an indication of being too old for a new farm, for a new project? You know, sometimes you can look at things and say, yeah, but this project only started 3 months ago. This looks like 5 years old, this equipment.
No, during my visits, Chair, I haven't picked it up.
Didn't pick it up?
No.
But you can't say you can't say that it's not true.
No.
Yes,
I can't.
yes. Well, my concern, part of my concern is that the size of this project and the money that the department was going to put into it were such that I would have thought that as head of department, you would have wanted to establish whether the expertise that you so much wanted to have from Paras was the expertise that came, or that it did come to the farm, and that it's something that you would have wanted to see. And also, at a certain stage, I would have thought that you would want to go and inspect and see how everything was like, and see that everything was as contemplated in the plan. You know, that's what I would have expected. It seems to me that something which would have deserved the attention of the HOD. After all, you had taken a leading role in selling the idea to the municipality and to the beneficiaries, and you had taken the trip to India. You had played a leading role. So I would have thought that you would have taken the trouble to say the expertise we are expecting from Paras, from India, when is it coming here? Has it arrived?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed, that has been the requirement, and I took it that at a certain stage the expertise was required at different levels of the development of the project, which means different people will then come
at different stages.
At different stages of the project. So it would mean that during the construction of the dairy, there would be different expertise. During the processing plant, there would be different expertise. What I would also want to mention was that for the construction, it means the operations itself. We had indicated to them that we wouldn't want a situation where you bring a contractor from India to come and do the work here. We had indicated to them that they will need to do that subcontracting to local people, so that you don't bring somebody to come and do the work that we can do. What is critical is that you must be here and monitor and make sure that the work being done is what you want to be done. That was my understanding, Chair. But I would then agree with you that myself personally, I did not go and verify every stage when people were coming to say, is it indeed the people that we expected that were coming? Maybe because I had confidence to the team that I was working with, because I understood that if there would be any problem, they would then be able to say, hey, we have a problem. We are not comfortable with the team that was brought, and then we'll then talk to it.
Of course, it may be that you might not have needed to personally go there, but maybe you could ask for reports that would give you the information that you needed. Reports such as would tell you who are the people who have been brought in from India, from Paras, what expertise do they have, what experience do they have, so that you can see if Paras is sending you what you really need, or are they sending you people that won't give you what you were looking for. As I say, one approach might be to go there and have a look and then ask questions, see people. But another way may be that as HOD, you say to your managers, I want a report that answers the following questions. And then if they give you that, and you are satisfied with the information, then maybe that's fine. But I would expect that at least you would want to know who has arrived bringing what expertise, because this is the expertise that we wanted. But you say that part you didn't get to know.
No, Chair, I did not go into that detail.
Yes, but also you didn't ask your managers to give you reports that dealt with that, among other things.
No, I didn't ask for it, Chair.
Okay.
Just on the same note, if you have a look at reference file D for Donald, and if you go to page 1357, these are really photographs taken in April of the dairy farm. They start from page 1353, but I want to take you to page 1357 in particular. So it's reference file D for Donald, and these are photographs of the premises in April 2019. Now you'll recall that Davi Mare came to the conclusion, as did the ENS or the National Treasury investigators, that there was no way the department was going to get value for money from this project. You recall that? The value for money proposition. Or do you want me to go over it with you?
Sorry, Chair, is she referring to the evidence or the...
I think let her start again, so that because I could see you were looking...
You are not, I beg your pardon, I should have waited for you to...
Yes. Okay,
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm.
Right, so I want us to look at a couple of these pictures, full stop.
Okay.
I also want you to look at them in the context of Davi Mare's evidence. His evidence, both documented and at the commission, was that you did not get value for money from this Estina project. Are you with me?
Yeah. Chair, indeed, the project was not completed. So it becomes difficult to say there was no value for money because it came to a halt during its implementation.
I understand the statement relating to value for money as having been based on, and Ms. Tabashe will tell me if her understanding is different, as having been based on saying, looking at certain documents in terms of what was contemplated, there is no way the department was going to get value for money here. In other words, not necessarily looking at what had been done in terms of the operations. Mr. Bashe, do you have the same understanding as me?
Absolutely, Chairman.
Yes.
I'm actually just trying to now find the actual
Yes.
documentation
Yes.
to help Mr. Tabete because he wasn't here, much as he's familiar with Davi Maria's
Yes.
report, as I understood, ma'am.
You see, same thing like you remember when we're talking about certain clauses of the agreement of July, where I look and I can immediately say, but these people are signing an agreement with Estina. Estina, as at that time, they don't know what its financial strength is, and as it turns out on the financial statements that were referred to the extent that those statements may have been a true reflection of Estina's financial situation. You say they are going to give Estina millions of rands. If Estina effectively runs away, they can't recover that money from Estina, and they can't recover it from Paras because Paras has got no obligation toward them. They have not signed an agreement with Paras. Estina has signed an agreement with them, but some of its clauses are questionable. But in any event, if they receive the money and the directors take the money out and disappear, the department won't get anything. So it's something along those lines to say, if you look at the documentation, what are the chances that the department would get value for money here? So I understood that statement in that context.
Yeah, Chair, I would not agree with him. Because my understanding was that the project was progressing well, and if it would have been allowed to get it to its conclusion, there was going to be a benefit in terms of value for money.
Well, that's not the basis for that response is not a proper basis to answer this type of question, because the basis for your response is, let's wait and see, allow us to work, allow the project to proceed,
Yes.
and let's see if there'll be value for money.
Yes.
But the question is saying, even before you get to start, you need to have documentation that tells you that if we embark upon this journey, there's likely to be value for money. So in other words, your answer should be, well, I don't agree because when you look at the following documentation, maybe the proposal, the feasibility study, if you look at this even before the operation starts, that gives you a clear idea that there will be value for money. That's the kind of answer. But if you said, allow us to work and see, it doesn't answer to the question of whether you should start at all, because you shouldn't start a project that won't give you value for money. You must be able to make a judgment call before you start whether this kind of project is likely to give you value for money.
Yeah, Chair, my understanding of Mr. Mare's analysis was that the project itself, he did not have a problem with it. He was then questioning the implementation part. That was my understanding. That because I still believe that on paper we had put everything properly. And if you're looking at the documents themselves, you would be able to derive value for money.
You may be right, and Ms. Kabashe will deal with that in due course. You may be right in terms of what he said, but I wonder whether he wasn't saying, if you look at how it is proposed this project will be implemented, it won't give the department the value for money. I'm saying I wonder whether he wasn't talking along those lines, but it may be that my understanding is not correct. Maybe your understanding is correct. Ms. Kabashe will take it from there.
If I might just give the example, again, that Davi Mare himself uses, of just the locality. So I'm agreeing with the chairman's analysis, but I'm saying that Davi Mare then illustrates what he's talking about, one example being the locality of the dairy farm. And he explains the type of cow, the type of herd you need in the eastern part of the Free State, as opposed to what you would require in the Midlands. He actually explained that in the Midlands you have an optimal environment for dairy farming, but that your weather patterns, your environmental patterns are quite distinct when you get up to an area like Vrede. So he says, just on locality alone, you got it wrong. Just on locality alone, you got it wrong. Then in terms of the type of cattle you purchased, the kinds of cows you purchased, he had various question marks related to that. The feed and the manner of feeding animals, he too raised issues with. And at the nub of all the concerns that he raised was the proposition that the department did not get value for money. One, not from the original proposal, not from the business plan, and certainly not from the feasibility study. What I was trying to do is look at that value for money proposition by having a look at what the farm looks like today, well, the part anyway that the Estina party was responsible for. There are pictures of most of the farm here, but I was trying to just take a snapshot. Hence my reference to these particular pictures. I'm going to go back to the Davi Mare report and just go through his conclusions and recommendations. But I think it might help if we look at these pictures and get rid of the pictures first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I never had an opportunity to look at this report and make comments into it.
Oh, even as you speak there.
No, I mean before he submitted his report.
Oh, before it came to the commission.
Before he submitted to National Treasury.
You only saw it after.
I only saw it after,
okay.
And it was concluded.
Yes.
Because in his report, I've got a number of issues that I would have raised and questioned. I did not agree with his report.
Well, even as you sit there, if there are things that you don't agree with in the report, you're entitled to say so and deal with them, because his report is part of the material that is placed before me, which I may take into account in making decisions and findings. And to the extent that it is such a material, it's important that somebody like you should have looked at it and taken a view and be able to say, I agree with this part, I don't agree with this part, and this is where I am critical of it, and then we can take it from there. So what I'm saying is, that door is not closed, because you must get a fair opportunity to deal with these things. And if you are not in a position to deal with it today, we might have to consider what may need to be done. But it's a report that you ought to be able to deal with insofar as it is critical of the project.
Thank you, Chair. I would request, Chair, that I be afforded an opportunity to do that, because I took it that it was concluded because it was already in the National Treasury submission or report. So we never got an opportunity to respond to it. Neither did I get an opportunity to respond to the Treasury report. So I was not able to engage and be able to say, here I agree, here I don't agree, and put my points across.
Yes. Okay, all right. I don't know if you want to say anything, Mr. Rush, on that.
Chairman, yes. You know that the Davi Marie report formed part of the bigger National Treasury investigation report.
Yes, I do.
We're okay with that. Good. You were interviewed by the investigators twice, if not more than that, but definitely twice. Am I correct?
Investigators of Treasury,
of National
the Commission.
Treasury. No, of National Treasury.
It was once, Chair.
The note I have here is that you were interviewed on the 9th of October 2013, and the second interview was on the 22nd of November 2013. Is that an incorrect recordal by the investigators? I'm reading from their report.
Yeah, I may need to go back and check.
Yes, you might not be sure.
I may not be sure.
Yes. Okay.
Whether indeed was it twice.
There's a possibility it could be twice, but you just remember once at this stage.
Yeah, I remember, Chair. Because otherwise then it will be 3 times.
Yeah.
Because the first time, it's when they came.
Well, it can't be 3 times without being 2 times first.
Yes.
Before you get to 3, you must cross 2 first.
Yeah, I'm thinking, Chair, if the dates that she indicates, because there was the first date when they came and we were not able to agree. That's the first day when I had to send them back, because they did not bring the necessary documentation with them.
Yeah, well, so you say You think it was once, you are not sure if it was twice, but you think there might even be 3.
Yeah,
You need to check certain things.
I'm sure it's twice, Chair,
Yes.
but if I hear the dates he's mentioning,
You think it may therefore be thrice?
it may be there for 3
Okay,
times.
so but the twice you accept now?
I agree,
Okay.
Chair, yes.
And of course, the issues they raised with you varied from the supply chain management issues to dealing with the financial obligations that you have to budget and appropriate, get correct appropriations, et cetera, et cetera. They dealt with a range of issues when they spoke with you.
Yeah. Chair, if I remember now very well, the first time, it's 3 times. The second time is when they came to request documents.
Yes.
Mostly it was documents they were requesting. Then the second time, it was then an interview,
Yes.
where then they asked me questions, then I responded to them.
And at that time?
That's the first time.
The
it's
third
when,
time?
The first time it's when we did not interact.
Yes, they wanted documents.
Yes, they wanted documents, but they did not bring me letters to say,
Yes.
indeed, this is an
Oh, that's when
investigation.
you send them back?
I sent them back because
Yes.
I had no proof
Yeah.
that they were coming from Treasury, and they
Yes.
did not bring with them documentation that convinces me that indeed they come from there. So I said I can't give you government document until I'm satisfied that this investigation has been authorized by National Treasury. So they went. He came back now with the letters that confirmed that indeed we are coming from Treasury, we're looking for these documents. And then the third time is when they came to do an interview.
Okay.
Of course, when you refused to cooperate with them the first time, what you could have done as an alternative was simply to phone National Treasury and find out from National Treasury if Mr. Dumisani Cele is somebody who works at National Treasury and who is authorized to come and speak with you. You could have done that.
I still, Chair, an investigation, you can't just confirm on the phone. They need to give me proper letters with terms of reference of the investigation so that I have an understanding of what the investigation is all about. Because I cannot just come and say I'm coming to do an investigation without proper document. What is it and what is it all about? So I had requested them to say, please prepare the documents for me so that I'm able to give you what you are requesting.
But even where they did give you the documentation, Mr. Tabete, you were a rather difficult customer, were you not?
Well, were you a difficult customer or not?
I don't know whether I was difficult
Or
or
were
not.
you a soft customer?
I thought I was a very soft customer because my understanding, Chair, was that if there would be an investigation in the provincial department where there is you are sending an official to a head of department who is at the lower level with the head of department, you would have communicated with the HOD first.
Yes, but part of the point that Mr. Bashe makes is this one. National Treasury does, as part of its function, as I understand it, conduct investigations into how certain departments, government departments, are handling certain things. Am I correct about that?
I agree, Chair, that's
Yes.
correct.
Now, and one would expect that the attitude of other government departments and their HODs would be to cooperate whenever the National Treasury sends anybody to conduct an investigation, because this is not somebody from outside of government. This is from the same government, you know. And that provided you could confirm with somebody senior at National Treasury, maybe your counterpart, or maybe somebody else senior if your counterpart is not there, that the person who has arrived in your department for the purpose of conducting some investigation is indeed somebody from National Treasury and has been mandated to do that. You wouldn't have need to say, I want it in black and white. You would accept, as long as it's somebody from National Treasury, you would say, okay, let me hear what do you want, and we'll cooperate and give you whatever it is that you want, because it's not like you are competition or anything. You are from within. You understand?
I understand, Chair.
Yeah, I think that's part of what Mr. Kabasha is saying, is namely, if as HOD, when somebody who says I'm from National Treasury arrives and wants your cooperation investigating something, you send them away. You don't say, look, let me phone the HOD or the DG at National Treasury or somebody senior to find out if they know about this person who's here and whether it's been mandated. That seems rather hard, or seems like you don't want to cooperate. The insistence on that kind of formality of wanting documents.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Indeed, in the first meeting, but not in the following meetings after that. In the first meeting, I insisted that there must be formalized documents, because I took it that an investigation cannot be taken very lightly. I understood it very well, and it has happened to me that a document from National Treasury gets sent to the province and it gets retracted because the person that did the document did not consult. So those were some of the issues that keep us awake to say, I cannot just release these documents until I have a formal letter from National Treasury that says, yes, indeed, we are doing this investigation. Release the documents. It saves me, because if that happens and it has not been officialized, then I'm in trouble again to have released those documents. So I wanted certainty to make sure that they give me the correct documentation, and then I'm able to release the documents.
Yes, but this, of course, was not the only incident where you refused to cooperate with the investigators from National Treasury, was it?
No, Chair, I don't, because I provided documents. The one instance where they had indicated to me that I had refused to give them documents. It was documents that we did not have. It's documents that we did not have. They asked us to provide them with all the tender documents, bid committees, and so on the Friday dairy. And we had not done that. The only document we had was a deviation document. Now, there was no way I could give them documents which they wanted, which we did not have. So that has been the problem. They wanted those documents. It was like we were hiding them. We had them, and we indicated that we did not go through that process. So we didn't have those documents.
Can I just give you one or two examples that they note in their report?
Yes, Chair.
At reference bundle A, page 69 is the page I will be reading from. So reference bundle A,
Yes, Chair.
Page 69. You have a
Yes.
section titled Witness Interviews. In that first paragraph, they say that after their first interview with you, Mr. Tabete, they approached Estina's director, Mr. Kamal Vasram. Maybe I should just pause there. Have you met Mr. Vasram?
Yes, I have.
How often had you met in the period 2011 when you arrived at the department and 2018 when you left? How often had you met Mr. Vasram?
Quite a number of times, Chair. I would not remember exactly how many times, but we had met.
When is the first time you met him?
It's when, I'm trying to think, I think it was when they came to make a presentation to the department on the proposal that was submitted by Estina.
Who had arranged that presentation?
It was arranged by them to us to come and make a presentation on the proposal of the project.
And when they introduced themselves to you at the time, what did they say to you?
Chair, but
When they asked for the appointment, in other words.
Chair, by the time they made the appointment, I knew they were Estina already. When they came to make the proposal, I knew them as Estina to come and make the presentation, the proposal of the project.
And who had informed you about Estina coming to make a presentation to you?
It was Mr. Vasram himself.
So you knew him quite well?
Yes, I knew him. He did came to the department.
So as at about 2012, early 2012, mid 2012, you would have known him very well?
I'm not sure what is very well, Chair, but I knew him.
Well, let's continue here because it's just to give context to what the investigators were asking of you, that I ask you these other related questions.
Okay, Chair.
So they say after their first interview with you, Mr. Tabete, they approached Estina's director, Mr. Kamal Vasram, to discuss the project with him. Mr. Vasram is Estina's only director. Mr. Vasram would not agree to an interview with ENS and stated that Estina was bound to confidentiality in terms of the agreement signed with the department. We requested that Mr. Vasram produce the agreement giving rise to his duty of confidentiality. Mr. Vasram ignored our request and we were not provided with a copy of the agreement. So at our second interview with Mr. Tabete, we requested him to waive confidentiality and facilitate a meeting between ENS and Mr. Vasram. Mr. Tabete refused to assist ENS and stated that we should conduct our own investigation without his assistance. Is that correct?
No, Chair. What they had requested me is that I provide them with Mr. Vasram's contacts, which I did, so that they will be able to talk to Mr. Vasram. Then, apparently, because in the interview, this happens when they came to do the interview with me. They said they had a problem in securing an appointment with Mr. Vasram. They would want to interview him. And from my side, I also tried to ask him to interact with them. Now, what came out of that was that they had then indicated to me that the investigation is with the department. Whatever that they want from them, it should be asked through me to provide to them because they were a third party into this. Otherwise, they were indicating that if this investigation is also to investigate a third party, then it would have to go through a different process. This interview was this investigation was for the department, not for the third party. So that's what they indicated to me, that they would not want to be part of the investigation. But if the department wants any information, because they were working with us, then they would be able to make that information available, but they would not be open for investigation to be part of the department.
I must say your version is very different to what's written here. Because if you look at paragraph 2.3.2, in the middle of the page, they go on to say, Mr. Tabete stated that he was in contact with Mr. Vasram and that he was aware that Mr. Vasram refused to meet with us. He was nevertheless unwilling to facilitate a meeting between ENS and Estina.
Yeah, Chair, that's correct. I have indicated to them that I was in contact, and he has indicated to me, because if he has indicated that he would not want to do it, now it can't be that I'm not willing, because I was telling them this is my interaction with him, and this is how he sees it. So I don't know where the unwilling comes in, because I had contacted him on their request, and he's indicated to me, and then in my meeting I've spoken to them. This is what he says.
Mr. Tabete, do you have a difficulty with the whole concept of transparency, openness, accountability?
No, I don't, Chair.
But when one reads these particular comments, amongst other things, one gains the impression that you prefer being closed in the manner in which you conduct your official, not even private life, your official duties, rather than being open and transparent.
Yeah, Chair, I'm sure I've explained my understanding.
Yes.
But this was their report. I don't know how they saw my explanation.
Yes.
But if I was to be made to make inputs in this statement, I wouldn't agree with it, the way it has been put, because I had explained that I've done what I was supposed to do, and this is what I got, and according to this, it was like I was not willing to do anything, but
Yes.
they acknowledge some of the activities that I had undertaken in terms of contact and in coming back to them.
You must feel free to say that's what they say, but it's wrong because of ABCD, or it's not justified what they are saying about me
Yes.
because of ABCD.
Thank you, Chair.
The next example, Chairman, through you, is at paragraph 2.3.3, where it is noted that Mr. Tabete further refused to waive his right to attorney-client privilege so that we could interview Advocate Didira of the State Attorney's Office. We wish to interview Advocate Didira in respect of the advice she gave Mr. Tabete and the Free State Department of Agriculture and Rural Development in respect of this procurement process and the second contract signed between the department and Estina. Is that correct? You would not waive your right to attorney-client privilege? And this is, mind you, in respect of a state law advisor.
I don't think, Chair, they needed permission from me.
Well, I'm not sure that I understand the idea of invoking privilege or in this kind of situation. It's all government.
It's all, yes, Chair.
It's not your personal matter.
No.
It's government. And if they need to talk to the state law advisors who advised you, I don't see why there should be a problem.
Yes.
And those state law advisors must be able to say to them, Mr. Tabete came to us and sought the advice on these facts. This is what he told us, and this is the advice we told them. We told him, we gave him. That shouldn't, as far as I'm concerned, really be a problem. But to the extent that they say you invoked that privilege, if that's what they say, then my problem is, one, with you invoking it, but two, with them thinking that they were precluded from talking to the state law advisors about what advice they had given you and on what basis. But you must indicate whether what they are saying, namely you refused to let them talk to the state law advisors on the basis that you were in a client-attorney relationship with the state law advisors, whether that's true. The privilege that you would rely on to say they mustn't speak to your legal advisors, so to speak.
Chair, I've not done so, neither verbally nor in writing, because I would understand this if I had used private lawyers. But these people they are referring to are state law advisors, and they are in a higher office than my department, in the office of the Premier. So they had all the rights to go. There was no way I could even tell them, don't go there. Because the way it comes across here is like I've said, don't even go to any of those offices to interview, which I say it can't be true, Chair.
But was there ever any discussion of that kind of privilege between you and them?
No, Chair. It was never discussed. My take is that if they come and do an investigation into the provincial government, they will then be doing with any other department that Phil had interacted with this particular project. That would be open.
Then the third comment they make is that when they asked you to provide them with the name of the CEO of Paras, again, you declined to do so. They say, despite our requests, we were not provided with the contact details or the name of the Paras CEO. ENS was therefore not able to contact the Paras representatives that Mr. Tabete alleges he dealt with during this procurement process. ENS is therefore not able to confirm whether or not Paras is actually involved in this agreement. Again, just the name of the people you met in India. Did you decline to assist them?
Chair, by this time, the CEO of Paras had already been into the project itself. The thing that came up, they wanted the letter of invitation that I had sent. Now, that is the letter that we were struggling to find in the department. We eventually got it off after some time because we could not find it, but we had sent it through. But then we eventually found the document. But by the time we made the document available to them, they had already decided to say we have refused. But there was no time where we had refused to provide information, because they had most of the documents with them, including the presentation of Paras.
1 second. Sorry. Yes, thank you.
And then finally, on page 93, under the heading Specific Limitations, page 93, specific, right at the bottom, specific limitations. They note the following. In this matter, it was clear to ENS that Mr. Tabete and or other officials may have withheld information from the investigation team. We may therefore not have obtained access to all of the documents relevant to this project. ENS was not able to interview Mr. Basram of Estina or Advocate Didera of the State Attorney's Office because Mr. Tabete would not facilitate our access to these witnesses. Our report is therefore based on information available to us at the time that we finalized the investigation. We have not obtained Estina Paras's version of events. Now, you would agree that it would have been useful for them to have obtained Estina's version of events and, of course, Paras's version of events.
Chair, this item on specific limitations, it's based on the arguments that we had already discussed. I think they were just concluding here what makes them to say they have limitations. The documents which are at disposal here and to everybody else that has requested the document are the same documents. There isn't any of the documents that is different from this that we have. That's why I don't understand what documents we may have withheld that they felt we were hiding from them. Because all what that we had, we provided them. All that they request, except what we did not have, that we were not able to provide to them. Therefore, Chair, I will not agree with that conclusion, because if you look at them, the documents that they've been analyzing, we had given them the document, except we were not able to give them tender documents, which I had indicated. I've explained to them that we've never even discussed the issue of Advocate Ditir. I don't know where it comes from that I had refused them to go and interview Advocate Ditir. Unless if they would be able to give us a letter to say, we gave you this letter, here is your reply. Or we met with you, we asked you, you refused. I had explained the issue of Vasram, how he felt about it sitting outside the department to be party to the investigation of the department, which I had explained to them. So this specific limitation, Chair, shouldn't have brought a limitation to the interview. It shouldn't have.
That's your version, and you're entitled to place it on record, Mr. Tabete. I might as well just take you through briefly, now that we're dealing with the ENS observations, stroke findings, stroke conclusions, and I haven't dealt with all of them. I might as well take you through the conclusions and recommendations that emanated from Davi Maria's report. He raised the following concerns. One, all three documents, that is the proposal, project proposal, the business plan, and the feasibility study that you relied on. He says all three documents lacked the information required to carry out a proper analysis of the project. For example, information on the detailed costing of equipment. That's one example he gives. Two, he says the feasibility study is...
I think he wants to comment on that one.
Oh, please do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I was of the opinion that we had spoken about his report. I had requested that because I never got an opportunity to respond to his report. I was of the understanding that we would then be afforded an opportunity.
We can deal with it some other time.
Yes, Chair.
Or you'll file a supplementary affidavit or something with your comments. You prefer doing that?
I think he might not be ready to indicate how we will deal with it, and he might need advice from his lawyers. I think what's accepted is that he will have an opportunity to deal with it in one way or another. maybe when we are done, there'll be some discussion to see how that can be done. One way is that after having studied it and when he could come back at a later stage so that he then says, these are the difficulties I have with it, and then his views or his criticism of it can be tested also. We will see how it should be dealt with. We will talk later.
Okay. If you could just make a mental note that one of the issues I was going to raise with you in any event is that it is only the project proposal that you had when you were signing the agreement. The feasibility study and the business plan are October 2012 documents, and those documents you only had in your possession much later. I'm just giving you this as a mental note to make, because that's where I would want to engage you on next time we deal with this issue. As the chairman doesn't like us surprising people. So, can we then come back to where we were originally, which was with the photographs that were taken in April of this year? Are you ready? That takes you back to page 1357 of bundle D for Donald, reference bundle D for Donald. Are you on page 1357?
That's correct, Chair.
And you have, of course, photographs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 on that page. I really will just focus on that page.
That's correct.
Or maybe the next page. Have you been inside this facility that is depicted here? This is the milk processing plant.
Yes, I have been, Chair.
You went into the one that belonged to Paras, I take it, when you were in India.
That's correct, Chair.
How do the two compare?
Chair, these were the pictures I understood that it was taken this year, 2019.
Correct.
Which is almost 4 to 5 years after it has been set up.
Yes, but I think the question relates to when you were inside the facility in Friede, knowing how the Paras one in India looked like. How did the two at that time compare? I think that's the question.
Chair, yes, I would respond to that because
yes,
when I went to Paras, I went to a complete project.
Yes.
And the Friede project is incomplete.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be a fair comparison.
When did you expect Estina to complete all work on the milk processing plant?
Chair, we had agreed that this was a 3-year plan. And when we put everything on hold, it was in the beginning of the second year. We had expected that in the third year, the constructions and everything and the commissioning would have been completed.
But, Mr. Tabete, one of the discussions we had last week, Friday, was what you signed off on the 18th of January, 2013. And that was that list of items under phase 1. And what we did on Friday was interrogate whether you ought to have signed off on all of those. Remember?
Yes, Chair. That was the phase 1 part.
So where you were satisfied, that's what that document indicated, the one we looked at on Friday. It indicated that you were satisfied that all the phase 1 items had been dealt with.
Yeah, Chair, the document that we went through was the initial 30 million allocated. That's the document that we went through. It did not include this part.
I fully agree with you that the milk processing plant did not form part of phase 1. It formed part of a different phase.
That's correct.
But the proposition I'm putting to you is the following. If you were satisfied in January 2013 that phase 1 was complete, what was your expectation going forward from phase 1? What was the next thing you were expecting to see happen at the farm?
Chair, because there was milestones set, and the implementation was following those milestones that we had set, because they were very clear that when you finish this one, this will be next, and this is the budget allocated for it. By the time when this had happened, it was not to its completion stage, because we had a challenge and we had to put the project on hold. So this was not signed off because it was not completed. Phase 1, I agree, it was completed and we had gone through each last week.
This particular project, the second part, are you saying the milk processing plant formed part of phase 2?
That's correct, Chair.
Do you recall what the timelines were for phase 2 to be complete?
Chair, I may have to go back to the milestones because they have dates and budgets allocations.
The reason I ask is because between the time that you signed off on the phase 1 milestones and the time that Estina left the farm, that period spans more than a year. Would you agree with me?
Chair, the period they left and the period when we put the project on hold, there are two activities that happened. We had put the project on hold, that nothing was happening so that we clear all the investigations, everything that was done. And we then, as we have proceeded during the year, realized that from the National Department of Agriculture, the money that was allocated to the projects, they have withdrawn it to say they will no longer make it available. Hence, we then decided to terminate the contract because we were no longer going to be able to meet our financial obligations. At that time, the project we had put it on hold so that we can conclude and agree. And during that period when we had put it on hold, one of the funders, which was National Agriculture, pulled out. They wrote to us and said they were withdrawing their allocation from the project on the basis that they had received a letter from National Treasury that we had entered into a legal agreement, which National Treasury was at that stage busy with the investigation.
Yes, indeed. Cusp did withdraw its allocation. In fact, I'm just looking at two letters here and trying to find the date. On the 21st of August, 2013, you, Mr. Tabete, a letter was directed to you, and the title is The Intention to Withhold Q2 Allocations of Cusp and Ilima Litsema for 2013-2014. So that letter was signed on the 21st of August, 2013.
Yes, I agree, Chair. I did receive that letter. This letter was preceded by a letter that came from National Treasury to National Agriculture, informing them that they should withdraw.
But the fact of the matter, please correct me if I'm wrong, the fact of the matter is you had already been allocated your Cusp money for the period 2012-2013.
That's correct, Chair.
And so it would only have been if this letter was written in August of 2018, 2013, you would have been given your allocation for the 2013-2014 year.
That's correct, Chair.
So you had enough money from Cusp, in terms of their allocations, of course.
That's correct.
To run for that financial year.
That's correct.
You only started running into difficulties in relation to the Vrede Dairy project as of April 2014. Is that the new financial year? Have I got it right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
I think so. I think so, Mr. I think I have it right. Because you had, this letter is dated 2013, yes? August 2013.
That's correct.
You had enough money until the end of March 2014. The new financial year would have started in April of 2014. So they would not have given you your Cusp allocation, not for Vrede, in April 2014. Does that sound right?
No, Chair. Like she says, the letter to me from National was sent on the 21st of August. They were referring to the budget allocation of that financial year. In question, they were withholding, they were saying, you should not spend that money into Vrede Dairy.
So they actually stopped you from spending it in that financial year?
That's correct, Chair.
I thought that what they had done was let you do what you needed to do in that financial year, but in the following year, limit their conditional grants to other projects, not to Vrede.
Chair, they stopped it in that financial year. They said they are withholding. It means we shouldn't spend in Vrede Dairy, and then they later released the money that we should spend in the province in other projects other than Vrede Dairy, because it was already in our budget in the province.
What we are really exploring, we mustn't lose track of that. What we are really exploring is what could Estina have done and completed before they left in the cancellation of that contract was the 13th of August 2014.
Yes.
Before they left in August of 2014. That's really what we're debating. And as part of that debate, we're looking at what monies were available, what responsibilities lay with Estina, what other responsibilities lay with the department. Are we on the same page?
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. We had put the project on hold. That's because because when we started to have problems, we were advised not to proceed spending on the project. Hence, we had put it on hold pending the investigation that was going on. So we wouldn't then be under investigation at the same time we proceed with the implementation of the project. So we allowed that the project investigation should go through and that we put it on hold. So there was no way that they would then proceed like everything is normal.
But that, of course, ought not to have impacted on Estina's contribution to the processing plant. Am I right? What happened with Cusp?
I agree, Chair, but the question was not on the Cusp allocation, it was on the entire project.
I have a particular interest in the milk processing plant because, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that milk processing plant was going to be built using Estina's money.
I agree, Chair.
And that's the same milk processing plant that's depicted in the photographs on page 1357.
Chair, I hear what she's saying, but because of the challenges and the investigation that was going on, we decided to put all the activities on site on hold. Whether it was our part or their part, we said, let's wait until everything is cleared, then we will then proceed. So what I'm trying to explain is that we did not say we're putting only what we were doing and let them proceed with what they were doing. Because if I would have a challenge of not completing the dairy, then it will impact on the processing plant.
What we can agree on, though, I trust, Mr. Tabete, is that this milk processing plant has never, ever operated.
It wouldn't, Chair, because it was not completed.
And what we can agree on as well is that the specs for this milk processing plant were not monitored by the department. So the specifications for building this plant, those were not monitored by the department.
Yeah, Chair, because there was a design that was provided of building it, which we had looked at it and agreed on it. So I wouldn't agree that we had not looked into the designs of the processing plant. We have.
Mr. Tabete, when is the last time you walked into this facility, as unfinished as it is?
I had gone into it, Chair, when they were busy with the construction, and I had gone into it after the project was put on hold. I think the last time I would have went into the project, it could have been around 2015, 2016, Chair.
Your impression of what you saw is important. Do you think that anything can be done with this structure and its contents as it currently stands, or as you last saw it in 2016? Can this still be completed, or should the whole thing just be pulled down?
Yeah, Chair, I still believe that the project can still be turned around for implementation.
I really want to be very specific to the milk processing plant, because you correctly say the two are distinct, really.
Okay.
So let's focus just on the milk processing plant for now. What's your view on this building? These are some of the rooms inside that big warehouse.
Chair, my response to that, it will be if we would want to assess the current status. And once the current status has been assessed, you would be able to be provided with cost implication so that you do your proper calculation, whether you decide, yes, indeed, let us proceed with the project, or no, we cannot proceed with the project, because it is very critical that we understand that financial assessment. But at the face value, I believe that more was already spent on putting up the structure. Less would be required in making it operational.
Seeing that you ventured to the other half of the project, the rest of the dairy farm, again, as at your last visit to the farm, what is your view? Is it likely to become commercially viable, or will it always have to be supported by government?
Chair, that project can still be made viable. That is my belief and understanding. Why I'm saying so, Chair? While we had put the project on ice, there was a lot of people who had interest from the private sector because they were happy with the infrastructure that was set up. That came and say, seeing that government is not moving with this project, why don't you dispose it? When Chair, I know I'm jumping the gun. When we were requesting the Free State Development Corporation to manage the project, we had also requested that we should look at options. At that time, I had 3 options in mind. One option was to dispose the project and recover the money. Dispose it means we sell it. That would be one decision that the state might take. Secondly, it would be to revitalize the project for the benefit of the farmers as beneficiaries. That was the second option. But that will then require that government must make financial resources available for them to benefit. My third, those were things on my mind, was to say, because the capacity that you require there is very high tech, that we look around and we find a strategic partner that will be interested to jointly work on the project with the farmers. Now, that is what I thought we could do, because we had invested in the project and the project is there, and it can be turned around to operate.
Mr. Tabete, you speak of the involvement of the FDC. Please just help us understand what their role was when you appointed them. I know they were appointed on the 14th of August, 2014.
Yeah.
Help us understand their role.
Yeah, Chair, we had requested the Free State Development Corporation to manage the project. This is what was key, because there were cattle, there was milking going on the project. So we wouldn't then, after we have terminated the contract of Estina, and leave the project without anybody attending to it. So we had requested, because there were assets also there, And if you don't have anybody managing those assets, which we believe they belong to the farmers, then you'd have a problem of that in that situation. Hence, then we had made a recommendation to the Executive Council that we appoint FDC to manage that project until such time that a decision is taken.
Now, Mr. Roy Jankelson, in his evidence, brought it to the chairman's attention that you were paying the FDC something in the region of 1 million rand a month to manage this project. Is that figure familiar?
Chair, we had made available to the FDC an amount of 20 million from the department to assist us in managing the project.
20 million to cover what period, Mr. Tabete?
Chair, we had allocated, we had said to them, Chair, if we were to go to the agreement we have entered into, because I don't want now to say things which were not part of the agreement. We had made an agreement with the FDC that what they should achieve in managing the project, because there were other things that we had asked them to look at.
Just before we go to that, can I get some clarity on one aspect? The FDC was brought in as an implementing agent.
That's correct, Chair.
The FDC was simply appointed by yourself. They did not go through any competitive process.
No, Chair.
Explain the reason for that.
Our understanding was that the Free State Development Corporation is the state-owned enterprise, which might mean that the state can allocate duties and responsibilities to the state-owned enterprise and then allocate them the budget to do so.
That's a very novel way of approaching it, because the FDC's core competency was not in agriculture, was it?
Chair, the FDC is responsible for, I would say, small business development across. It would not be specific to say only in these areas. So we were looking across in terms of assisting small business development. If I may go back a little bit, Chair. When FDC was formed, there was amalgamation of different programs, of which one of them was what we had called an agricultural development corporation in the previous administration. So we understood it that they would assist in all respects of business development, and we understood Free Dairy to be a business. And hence we then allocated to them.
So just clarify this. In terms of which prescript would you then have appointed the FDC?
Chair, again, we went to the state law advisors to deal with this, which they advised us, and they also assisted us in drafting that agreement. So we took it that they were very familiar with the prescripts that were operating, because they looked at that. So they assisted us and they advised that. Then we drafted that agreement, which we then signed with the Free State Development Corporation.
Mr. Tabete, with all due respect, you can't pass the buck all the time when you are the head of department. You have to take responsibility for some things. You have to interrogate certain things. You can't say my lawyer advised. Lawyers advise. You take the final decision. That's how it operates in the private sphere and in the public sphere as in government. So you had decisions to take, much as you might be getting advice from lawyers. So I find it difficult to accept an answer that says our lawyers took care of all of this. That's the essence of what you're saying.
Yeah, Chair, the action of the state law advisors is the action of the department. That's how I understand it. In responding that way, I was responding to the question that was saying, did you understand the prescripts? Were they allowing you? Hence, I went to consult so that they assist and advise. They would have said, if it was not, no, don't go that direction. So my understanding is that they had looked at that and they had said it is possible. It could be done.
Do you recall which prescripts they said they relied on?
Chair, that was not disclosed to me because all that I needed, whether it was possible, if it was possible, then we should be assisted to draft that agreement, which they did.
You see, the difficulty I have is that you are now taking funds that are made available to your department and using those funds to pay over to a different entity that is your new implementing agent without there being a clear understanding whether the supply chain management prescripts would apply to this implementing agent you have brought in. 1. 2, without there being a clear understanding on the degree of subdelegation or subcontracting of services that that entity is entitled to embark on. 3, it then puts into question your oversight role as a department. Am I explaining my difficulties clearly?
Chair, I hear what she's putting across.
Yes.
We had, I think the contract that we had entered into between us and FDC was very clear what we expected them to do. Now, we wouldn't give them responsibilities and we do not allocate the budget for them to do so because it was our responsibility to make sure that the project is being managed. And hence we entered into an agreement so that nobody comes and say, but I don't know what is my role. We've cleared that.
Please turn to the court record bundle. I don't think we've used it today. So if you go to the court record bundle, page 760.
A or B?
B, Chairman.
If I can ask the page again.
760. And this time the black numbering is aligned to the red numbering. Are you ready?
Yes.
Oh, Chairman, I'll wait.
I think you said B.
I did say B, Chairman.
Yes. 760.
760, Chairman.
Thank you.
So you have it before you, Mr. Tabete,
That's correct.
and here again, it's an agreement entered into by the department and the Free State Development Corporation.
That's correct, Chair.
You had wanted to take us through, however briefly, the obligations of the parties, which you'll find on 762, page 762.
Chair, that is item number 3, obligations of the parties. I will read from item 3.1 going down.
Which ones, Mr. Bashir, do you want him to read?
He had wanted to explain that there are distinct obligations that each party would have, Chairman.
Oh, okay.
And so I was giving him the
All right.
opportunity by giving him the document to look
okay.
Yes, Chair, I'm not sure if I had to read through into the records.
You don't need to, if you can just explain, if you wanted to refresh your memory, then you can just explain what you need to explain.
Yes, Chair. What we had requested the FDC to do, because together with this agreement, there was also a list of assets that went with it. So we had clearly outlined what we had expected FDC to do, which was managing the project, clearly identifying the assets and all those things, so that if we would have had a problem with any of the assets, we would be able to go back to Estina to say, but we have a problem here. We are not agreeing with your list of assets that you have handed over. The following things that were purchased were missing and so on. So we had also agreed with that, with the FDC. And Chair, I think this is what I wanted to explain, that we had made it very clear to the FDC what we had expected them to do.
Yes, okay.
I find that last explanation a little difficult to understand. You did not monitor Estina as an implementing agent, as I've understood your evidence. Am I correct?
No, Chair, we did.
All you got from them were reports, monthly reports, quarterly reports. But you would not have any idea as to how many cattle were at the dairy at any one time. Would you?
Chair, those reports were verifications to us to say, if you go on site, this is what would have been happening. Because that's what we would then use to say, what has happened? How far are you? And then they will give us the report, and you then use the report for verification purposes. That's what I understood, why we then requested them to give us monthly and quarterly reports.
No.
So what you are saying is what you are saying that you used the reports that you received to keep yourself abreast of what was happening, and to then, when necessary, decide if you want to go and see whether what the reports tell you is what the situation is on the ground.
That's correct, Chair.
But did you ever go to see for yourself whether the reports were telling you the correct position?
That's true, Chair, I did.
You did?
That's correct.
Okay.
How often would you go, Mr. Tabete?
Personally, myself, Chair, I would very infrequently go.
Infrequently.
infrequently myself.
Yes, okay.
Taking that, then there would be other official that will go more frequent.
You see, I asked the question because we have witnesses who've come here to say cattle were being stolen from the farm. Feed was being stolen from the farm. Milk was sold in town. And there was a question mark about whether that milk was being sold legitimately or not. And this is why I ask, or I make the statement that the department did not monitor this project closely while Estina was the implementing agent.
Yeah, Chair. The fact that things were happening does not necessarily mean we were not monitoring. Let me put one example. After we had done the physical verification of the cattle, there was a time when we realized that cattle were missing. Not all the cattle were there. The missing of the cattle does not mean that we did not verify, because if they were stolen, they were stolen, but we knew that there was a problem. The verification of the cattle were not enough. So what I'm trying to say is that our physical verification may not mean that we did not know those things. If we did not know, it will mean that we were not aware what was happening on the ground. So we knew what was happening on the ground.
I have my doubts that the department knew what was happening at Estina. And this is why I have a difficulty even with the inventory list that the FDC prepared. They arrived, they counted what assets they could, made a list. There was no list that you could compare the FDC list with when the FDC had completed their exercise. Tell me differently if there was.
Yeah, Chair, I'm not sure which list she's referring to.
So you have told us that there was an inventory list that the FDC prepared.
No, Chair. The inventory list was prepared by Estina on the handover. So this list was given to FDC so that the FDC, together with the department, went to do verification of what Estina had said. These are the assets, so that when we hand them over to FDC, they know. And they have verified themselves that indeed what was on the paper and what they were receiving was there. That's what we did. So that list was prepared and given to us by Estina. Then we took that list together with FDC, verified the list and handed them over to FDC.
Please go to page 769 of the same court record bundle. It's just follows on from what we're looking at. And you are saying that this document was prepared by Estina.
Chair, we prepared the document, but the inventory list contained in the document was provided by Estina to us. And then we prepared this handover of asset document.
If you look at page 771, you there have a detailed list of assets being handed over on August 12, 2014.
That's correct, Chair.
Are you saying this list was prepared by Estina.
That's correct, Chair.
How would you know whether this list was a complete list? How would you know whether all the assets that had been purchased with government money were recorded on this list?
Chair, on a monthly basis, we were receiving reports on what has been done and what has been purchased. So our assessment of this list was to verify and just check if everything that was in the monthly report indeed was in the asset register.
Well, that couldn't be adequate, Mr. Tabete. That could not be adequate, could it? Because if the reports themselves on which you relied did not have correct information, then you wouldn't know. The only way to know would be to have gone to the farm itself and physically checked that, and not just at the end, where they hand over, but as the reports, monthly reports were coming, to make sure that from time to time you go and check whether what the reports are telling you, monthly reports are telling you, is what is true, isn't it? Because otherwise, if you didn't do that before Estina left, and you just assumed that the reports, the monthly reports that they gave you, correctly reflected the situation on the ground, then if you take the handover list and check that, then you are entirely in Estina's hands. If they had decided not to tell you about certain things, then you wouldn't know. You'd say, no, this list is fine, but actually it's not fine.
Yeah, I hear, Chair. That would be possible on minor items, but on the major items, we would have been able to pick up.
Yeah, I'm sure on certain big machines, those you could. Yeah. But of course, some things that might be minor, they might end up being quite something big financially if it's a number of things that are put together. I mean, I see here there are references even to wheelbarrows and so on. Anyway, that's fine. The answer you have given is that you relied on comparing the list, the handover list, with the monthly reports that you got.
Mr. Tabete, can you please go back to reference bundle D for Donald? Leave that one open, yes, just go to D. And please go to page 1407. Now, this is a monthly financial report. Is this the kind of report you are referring to? Page 1407, Chairman. It just is one sample of a monthly financial report.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct, Chair.
Now, when you compare this report to the report in that court records bundle that I said you shouldn't close. They are completely different. So the record you have on this detailed list of assets being handed over on August 12, 2014, those assets are not reflected on this particular, I'll talk about this particular monthly report, which is one for the 31st of January 2013.
Yeah, Chair, on the monthly report, the report will say we have spent 120,000 to buy a tractor. In the asset register, they will tell you it's a John Deere, whatever size, that report, because the report is not an asset register. It would not give you all those details. It will just tell you that we bought a tractor. Then you can do verifications on the tractor in terms of the monthly report if you want to do so. But the asset register must then give you the details of what tractor is it. So that's the difference. But what you would then do, you would know that in November 2012, a tractor was bought. In such and such a time, if there was another tractor, a tractor was bought, so you will know the number of tractors that were eventually bought. Then you can compare them in your asset register to check if indeed all the tractors that were bought are in your asset register.
But of course, there is also, I'm just compounding the issue. There's also the evidence of Mr. Besson, who says that there were so many of the tractors that belonged to the farm that were parked in his yard because he fixed tractors and various forms of equipment. Did you know about that?
Chair, my understanding is that they had agreed with him to provide services for the tractors on the farm as a local business person. Then the tractors will then go there for repairs and services. That would happen. So I would not disagree with that.
In any event, the long and short of it, Mr. Tabete, is these reports are not comparable. What you call the detailed list of assets and what we are looking at as a monthly financial report are not documents that speak to each other. I trust we can agree on that at least.
In other words, Mr. Tabete, the proposition is your reliance on monthly reports to establish the accuracy or correctness of the handover list was misplaced because the monthly reports didn't contain all the information that they would have had to contain if that comparison was going to give you the correct answer. What do you say to that?
Chair, I would still say for the sake of a monthly report, it did contain the information we required.
No, not for the sake of the monthly report, for the sake of determining whether the handover list of assets that was given to you was a correct reflection of the assets that were supposed to be handed over to you. I think because the question, if I understood it correctly, was in that area. Did I misunderstand something?
No, absolutely, Chairman.
Yes. So in other words, the question was, you said you were given this handover list by Estina,
Yes, Chair.
and you took this handover list and went to FDC, and together you wanted to check, and then I think that's where you said you looked at the monthly reports to see whether, in effect,
Yes.
you are being given the correct information on the handover list. And the proposition is, if you look at the kind of information you were being given in monthly reports, your reliance on the monthly reports for that purpose was misplaced. What do you say?
Chair, I agree that the monthly report will not give you the details. The monthly report will say farming equipment, we spend 42,000 to buy farming equipment. And then the asset register will then say, what are these farming equipments that you are referring to? All that we've been looking at to say, there has to be farming equipment in terms of the monthly report. Then you come to the asset register and say, you had spent so much money in buying farming equipment. Where on the list are those farming equipment? That's the comparison. I would say, even though it may not give you the full details, but it will be able to respond to your question.
So is your answer therefore that you had to look at the monthly reports together with the asset register to see whether the handover list was correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay.
Can I move on to a different aspect?
Let's take a short break before we move on. It's about 4 minutes past. We'll resume at 4:15. We adjourn.
All rise.
Yes, Ms. Tabasha.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, the legal team on both sides has had a brief discussion. Then we approached you to ask if we could adjourn at this time. Our colleagues have a long way to go, only because they traveled into Johannesburg this morning and they have to go home. There is quite a bit of material that we still have to cover, and I think it would not be fair to rush Mr. Tabete in his answers or to rush the evidence leader in her questions. So in the circumstances, Chairman, we ask if you would please consider adjourning. At this time, it is 4:30. And what we hope you'll be able to do is give us a date sometime in September. We believe we shouldn't need more than an afternoon to complete the evidence of Mr. Tabete. I saw my colleagues approach Mr. Tabete, so I've assumed that he too will be available or will make himself available for the September date. So that's what we are requesting, DCJ.
Okay, no. We are going to adjourn at this stage without Mr. Tabete having finished his evidence, simply because it's clear that we are not going to finish with his evidence today. And we can't continue tomorrow because not everybody is available tomorrow. Another date will be arranged. There have been discussions by the legal team of the Commission and Mr. Tabete's legal team and myself. A date will be arranged for Mr. Tabete to come back, and there are some documents that will be exchanged in the meantime in order to make sure that when he comes back, he is able to deal with certain matters as well, including statements that might come through from some individuals from the Department of Agriculture in the Free State, as well as he will get a chance to also deal with one of the reports to which reference was made during his evidence. So we are going to stop at this stage, Mr. Tabete, and you will come back. Is that fine?
That's fine, sir.
Yes. Probably we won't need the whole day for you when you come back. It should be maybe 3 hours or thereabout, and then we should be able to finish. That hopefully will be sometime in September, but the date will be given to you in due course. So we are going to adjourn. With regard to tomorrow, there will not be any sitting of the Commission tomorrow. But with regard to Thursday and Friday, there was a witness who was going to give evidence, but a statement will be issued tomorrow as to whether that witness can be heard on Thursday and Friday. There is a possibility that we might not sit on Thursday and Friday either. If we don't sit on Thursday and Friday, we will still nevertheless sit on Monday. And the media statement that will be issued will indicate which work stream the witnesses who will be giving evidence next week will come from Monday. onwards. So we are going to adjourn then now. The proceedings are adjourned.
All rise.